I'm Allison Green, 29, and the day my phone lit up with a text from my parents, I thought it was just another jab until I read the words, "You're banned from the reunion, idiot." That single message shattered something I'd been holding together for years. They didn't know the entire event they were bragging about was booked under my company's name, signed by my hand. So, I did what they never expected. I made one call and erased the whole celebration from existence. Hours later, their phones exploded, their pride collapsed, and for the first time, their silence wasn't judgment, it was fear. That was the day the family embarrassment turned into the one person they couldn't ignore. And it all started with that text. The message came through just as the office clock blinked 10:47 a.m. I was reviewing a floral layout for a corporate gala when my phone buzzed. A family group chat, one I rarely opened unless it was absolutely necessary. "Mom, you're banned from the reunion, idiot. Don't embarrass the family again." There was no emoji, no explanation, just that. The words lingered on the screen like venom, curling into the pit of my stomach before slowly burning their way out as quiet laughter. I stared at it for longer than I should have, my reflection faint in the glossy screen. My coworker, Jared, peeked over the edge of the cubicle. "Something funny?" "Yeah," I said, pocketing the phone. "Family stuff." He nodded, oblivious, and went back to tapping away at his keyboard. I looked at the monitor, at the color-coded spreadsheet for next week's event, the reunion booking under Davenport Family Celebration. My family, booked under my company. Every balloon, every floral arch, every catered dish, my team's work, my signature on the contract. For a moment, I sat in stillness, listening to the faint hum of the air conditioner and the muffled sounds of laughter from the break room. Then I exhaled, slow and calm, the way I always did before making a business call. "Got it," I replied to my mother's text. Nothing else. No question, no sarcasm. Just that. Then I picked up my office phone, dialed one extension, and said, "Cancel the Davenport event." There was a pause on the other end. "The one this weekend?" "Yes." Full cancellation. All vendors notified, refunds processed, venue released. "Send me the confirmation once it's cleared." A brief hesitation. "Understood." Click. The sound of disconnection felt final, satisfying. The irony was almost cinematic. They'd spent weeks bragging about this reunion, the grand comeback of the Davenports, as my father called it. There were posts online, countdowns, even matching t-shirts printed by my cousins. And every single part of it had passed through my department, through my silent approval. They thought I worked in some boring office job. They never paid attention to what I did, just assumed it was administrative fluff. But in truth, I ran the operations branch for Marigold Events, one of the most sought-after luxury event companies in the city. If something glamorous happened in our town, chances were my signature was buried in the paperwork. But to them, I was still the screw-up daughter who couldn't handle pressure. I used to believe they'd change, maybe see me differently after all these years. But every family gathering was a reminder that no matter how much success I collected, in their eyes, I was still the problem. When I was 16, I tripped on stage during my aunt's wedding while holding the cake knife. It hit the floor, the cake toppled, and for years afterward, they called me the disaster child. When I graduated, they forgot to show up. When I bought my first apartment, they said, "Don't you think it's too far from the family?" The reunion was supposed to be my peace offering. I arranged everything in secret, thinking if I handed them a perfect night, maybe they'd see I wasn't the idiot they made me out to be. But apparently, I'd misjudged the script. By 3 p.m., I was driving home, the golden sunlight spilling through the windshield, my thoughts playing back the text again and again. I imagined the scene, my parents walking into a locked venue, a closed for private event cancellation sign hanging on the gate, guests in glittering dresses standing in the parking lot, murmuring in confusion. I shouldn't have felt satisfaction, but I did. When I got home, my apartment was quiet except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. I set my phone on the counter and started making tea. The first call came through just as the kettle began to whistle. Then another. Then another. Within 10 minutes, my phone was a storm of vibrations. "Dad, 16 missed calls." "Mom, 12 missed calls." Cousin Lila, 8. Unknown numbers, probably distant relatives. Then the text started. Where's the food? The hall's locked. Did you cancel this? People are arriving. What's happening? This is humiliating, Allison. I didn't respond. I didn't even read all of them. I left the phone buzzing on the counter, the screen lighting up every few seconds like a heartbeat. I sat by the window, sipping tea, watching the city lights blink to life outside. By evening, the social media storm began. My mother's carefully curated Facebook post read, "Unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, the Davenport reunion has been postponed. We thank everyone for their understanding and love." Below it, relatives commented with sympathy. "Oh no, that's terrible. What happened? Hope everyone's okay." But it didn't take long for the truth to surface. Someone, probably the catering manager, leaked that the cancellation came directly from the booking division. My division. My name was on the signature file. And soon enough, whispers spread. By 9 p.m., a mutual acquaintance texted me. "Did you really cancel your family's reunion? That's savage." I didn't reply. I just smiled faintly and turned off my phone. That night, I lay awake in the dark, the faint hum of the city beneath my window. It wasn't triumph I felt, it was something sharper, colder. A kind of release that hummed in my chest like static. They'd mocked me for years, excluded me, spoken to me like I was a stain they couldn't wash out. Yet when everything fell apart, it was my absence that mattered most. For once, I wasn't the disaster. They were. The next morning, the silence was louder than the calls. My parents hadn't texted again. No apologies, no explanations, just a void that seemed to echo across every chat group, every family thread. At work, Jared looked at me as I walked in. "Hey, wasn't your family's big reunion this weekend? How'd it go?" I smiled faintly, sliding my bag under my desk. "You could say it, didn't." He laughed, not catching the weight behind the words. "Lucky escape, then. Family events are chaos." "Yeah," I said quietly. "They are." I opened my email, sifting through client messages, and noticed one that wasn't business-related, an old thread from my mother, dated months ago. The subject line read, "Family expectations." I hovered over the trash icon, then hesitated. Instead, I opened it. "Allison, we just hope you can be more like your brother this year. He's consistent, reliable. We know you mean well, but sometimes you just try too hard." I closed the email without finishing it. Maybe she was right. I did try too hard. But not anymore. That evening, as the city darkened and the sky took on the deep blue of twilight, a knock sounded on my door. Firm. Measured. I froze, then set down my glass of water and went to the peephole. My mother stood there, coat buttoned, expression tight. Behind her, my father lingered in the hallway, hands in his pockets, eyes cast down. I unlocked the door but didn't open it all the way. "Allison," my mother began, her voice calm but brittle. "We need to talk." "I figured you might," I said, keeping my tone even. "You canceled the reunion?" "You told me I was banned," I replied. "I just followed directions." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You embarrassed us." I let out a soft laugh. "You did that yourself." My father finally spoke, voice low. "We didn't mean what we said. It was frustration. You could have just talked to us. Like the times I tried and you laughed? Or when you called me a mistake at dinner." The silence that followed was suffocating. My mother's jaw tightened. My father looked away. Finally, she said, "You've made your point. But this grudge, it's not healthy." I smiled faintly. "It's not a grudge, Mom. It's closure." Then I shut the door gently, not slamming it, just enough to make the latch click. The following Monday, work felt strangely quiet. People whispered around the office printer, glanced at me, then looked away. News traveled faster than truth ever could. Somehow, someone had connected my last name to the canceled Davenport event. By noon, even my boss, Melissa, called me into her office. She closed the glass door gently. "Allison," she said, her tone careful, I heard what happened this weekend. With your family." I folded my hands in my lap. "Yes, I handled the cancellation personally." Her eyebrows lifted. "You didn't violate any client contract, did you?" "No," I said. "They were the clients, but the payment came from my account. I had full rights to withdraw the booking. Melissa studied me for a moment, as if trying to decide whether I was reckless or brilliant. All right, then it's your business. Just make sure nothing reflects back on the company. It won't. She nodded once, then gestured toward the door. Good. Get some rest. You look like someone who just won a quiet war. I gave her a faint smile and walked out. She wasn't wrong. That evening, my brother's name lit up my phone. Mark. I hadn't spoken to him in months. He'd always been the golden one, steady, charming, the kind of son who never made mistakes because he never took risks. When I picked up, his voice was sharp. You realize what you did, right? You made them a laughingstock. I didn't make them anything, I said. They texted me first. He scoffed. You're twisting this. You could have ignored it. But no, you had to make a point. I did ignore it, I said evenly. Until they made me part of the punchline. He paused. You think this makes you strong? It just proves them right. Something in me hardened. Then maybe being right isn't something to be proud of anymore. I hung up. The week that followed was a blur of family silence and online whispers. My cousins deleted posts, my parents stayed offline completely. Every day at lunch, I saw fragments of gossip pop up in local community threads, someone claiming the daughter canceled everything out of spite, another saying the family deserved it. I didn't engage. Let them talk. But on Friday, a letter arrived at my apartment. No sender name, just neat handwriting and the faint scent of my mother's perfume. I stood by the counter, reading under the kitchen light. Allison, we raised you to have dignity, not cruelty. What you did was unnecessary. You've humiliated us and yourself. Your father says he's done trying. I hope someday you realize what family means. There was no signature, just white space. I folded the letter, placed it in the drawer beside old bills and apartment papers, and went back to work. Saturday came heavy with rain. I met Jared at a downtown cafe to finish some event layouts. Between coffee sips and scattered jokes, he asked, "So your folks still mad?" I looked out the window at the blurred traffic. Mad's not the word. More like exposed. He tilted his head. You sure you're okay? Yeah, I said. Actually, for once I am. When I got home later, I noticed something odd, a car parked across the street, engine running, headlights off. I waited by the door for a moment, watching through the peephole. Then the engine cut. A man stepped out tall, broad-shouldered. Even in the dim light, I recognized my father's posture instantly. I opened the door before he knocked. Couldn't just call? I asked. He looked older than I remembered. You never answer. Maybe I like silence. He stepped inside without waiting. The smell of rain followed him. Your mother's not sleeping, he said flatly. She cries every night. She texted me first, I replied. He rubbed his face. You've made your point, Allison. We hurt you. Fine. But you didn't have to burn the whole thing down. I didn't burn anything, I said. I just stopped keeping it alive. He looked around my apartment, eyes scanning the minimal furniture, the stacks of files, the quiet order of the space. You think this life, this job, means you've won something? I met his gaze. No, it means I stopped losing. For a second, his expression faltered. The man who never admitted defeat suddenly looked uncertain. Then he reached into his coat pocket and set a folded envelope on the table. Your mother wanted you to have this. He turned to leave before I could respond. When the door shut, I opened it. Inside was a photo, our family at the lake years ago. My mother smiling, Mark beside her, me in the corner, half cut from the frame. On the back, written faintly in her handwriting, we loved you even when you made it hard. I sat there for a long time, staring at it. Not angry, just empty. Sunday morning, I decided to visit the old Davenport house. I hadn't been there in 3 years, not since the last family argument that ended with me walking out mid-dinner. The neighborhood hadn't changed much, same manicured lawns, same pale fences. When I parked by the curb, the curtains twitched. My mother was watching. She opened the door before I reached the porch. You came, she said quietly. I didn't come to fight, I said. Neither did I. Inside, the house smelled like lemon polish and regret. Photos lined the walls, smiling faces, staged happiness. We sat across from each other in the living room. My mother's hands were clasped tight. You embarrass me, Allison. But I suppose I deserved some of it. I stayed silent. She looked down. When you left years ago, we thought you'd come back different. Stronger, maybe. I didn't realize we were the ones who needed to change. It wasn't an apology, but it was close enough. I didn't do it to hurt you, I said. I just wanted you to feel what it's like to be dismissed. Her eyes met mine, tired and searching. We did. We sat in quiet understanding, the rain tapping softly against the window. Then she said, almost whispering, there's another reunion next month. Smaller, just the immediate family. We'd like you to come. I hesitated. Why? Because, she said, voice trembling slightly, I think it's time we start acting like one. I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to accept, part of me didn't trust the invitation. I'll think about it, I finally said. She nodded. That's enough. That night, back in my apartment, I placed the old photo on my desk beside my laptop. It felt like a relic from a life I'd stepped out of but couldn't quite erase. Then my phone buzzed, another message, this time from an unknown number. You think you're done? Wait until you see what we're planning. I frowned, rereading it twice. No name, no clue who it was. Just that one line. I typed back, who is this? No response. The text stayed on my screen all night, a single sentence that refused to disappear. By morning, I decided not to wait for whoever sent it to make the next move. I drove to the office early, the city still half asleep. My company's database had contact records for every client tied to the Davenport booking. I scrolled through them, checking for any strange follow-ups or unauthorized activity. There it was, someone had reactivated the canceled order overnight. Same date, same location, new payment record. The name used, Mark Davenport. He was trying to rebook it. I leaned back in my chair, processing the irony. My brother, the family's fixer, couldn't stand that I'd undone their perfect show. He was attempting to rewrite the ending. So, I made a decision. If they wanted another reunion, they could have one, but this time, I'd attend. A week later, I received an official invitation. Thick cardstock, gold lettering, the same tone of forced cheer they always used. Davenport family dinner of a new beginning. I RSVP'd without hesitation. When I arrived that Saturday evening, the venue was the same hall they'd planned before, the one I'd shut down. It looked perfect again, polished floors, white lights, expensive catering. But the tension was visible. Conversations were too polite, smiles too practiced. My brother stood near the bar, pretending not to see me. My mother spotted me first. She walked over, uncertain but trying. You came, she said. I said I'd think about it, I replied. I did. My father appeared beside her. Let's just have a quiet night, he said, tone cautious. No drama. I nodded. Fine by me. Dinner started smoothly. People avoided the subject of last time, filling the silence with small talk about work and vacations. But I could feel Mark's gaze from across the table. Finally, he spoke. So, Allison, he said loudly, setting his glass down. Feel good about what you did? The room fell silent. I looked at him. Define good. You humiliated Mom and Dad. You made the whole family look like fools. They texted me to stay away, I said. I listened. That was a joke, and you know it, he snapped. You took it personally, as always. Mom tried to cut in, but I stopped her with a glance. If it was a joke, maybe you should have told me before posting pictures of your new suits and calling me unstable behind my back. His jaw tightened. You think this little revenge makes you better than us? No, I said. It just made things honest for once. My father's voice rose, sharp. Enough. This isn't the place. But it was too late. Everyone was watching. I leaned forward. You all spent years treating me like a problem to hide. When I finally stopped playing along, you called it cruelty. Maybe you should ask yourselves why a daughter would rather cancel a reunion than show up to one. The room was still. Plates untouched, hands frozen mid-gesture. My mother's eyes glistened. Mark looked ready to argue again, but something in my tone stopped him. Finally, my father spoke quietly. You made your point. I stood up. I didn't come here to make a point. I came to end it. Outside, the night air felt cleaner than it had in years. I walked to the parking lot, my heels echoing against the pavement. Halfway to my car, I heard footsteps behind me. It was my mother. She caught up, slightly breathless. "Allison, wait." I turned. She hesitated, then said softly, "We were cruel. I know that now. You wanted to prove yourself, and instead of supporting you, we pushed you away." Her voice trembled. "I just wanted the family to look perfect. I didn't realize I was breaking it." For the first time, she sounded real, not defensive, not polished. Just a woman who'd run out of excuses. I nodded slowly. I didn't want to destroy anything. I just wanted to stop being invisible. She stepped closer, then stopped disappearing. "Come home sometimes." "Not for the show, for us." I didn't answer right away. There were years of pain behind that single invitation. But her eyes told me she meant it this time. "I'll think about it," I said finally. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was something. 3 weeks later, I sat in my apartment sorting invoices when an envelope slid under the door. No name, just handwriting I recognized marks. Inside was a single photo. All of us at the reunion dinner. I was in the frame this time, seated beside my parents, not on the edge. On the back, he'd written one short sentence. "Maybe we all needed the cancellation." I smiled for the first time in days. Life moved on quietly after that. Work picked up again, new events filled my schedule, and the Davenport family group chat stayed oddly peaceful. No insults, no guilt trips, just small updates, photos, and attempts at civility. It wasn't perfect, but for once, it was real. Sometimes, when I walked past the old event hall on my commute, I'd remember that morning, the moment everything changed with one message. "You're banned from the reunion, idiot." It used to sting. Now it felt like the start of something necessary. Because sometimes, the only way to fix a broken family isn't to keep showing up. It's to let them see what happens when you don't. And once they do, they never forget who actually kept everything standing.